Did any of that get heard?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Let's try that again. Welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board. Today is September 6th, 2023, and my name is Dawn Philibert. I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like to introduce other members of the board. To my far left is Mark Muscatelli. John, sorry. And then there's, sorry, Mark Baer, Stephanie Wyman, Frank Kochman, and do we have anyone online? I don't think so. And staff, Marla Keene and Marty Gillies. Thank you for being here. There are a number of ways of participating in tonight's meeting. You can either attend in person, and if you do, please sign in on the sign-in sheet at the back of the room to document your participation in this hearing. If you're online, please send your contact information through the chat function online so we have a record of your participation. And if you're on the phone, please send your contact information. Please email it to mkeene, Keene, at southburlingtonvt.gov. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, and we will start with number one on the agenda, which is emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, there are doors in each back corner of the auditorium. You would exit those doors and either turn right or left to get outside. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items? Are there any announcements?
I don't think so.
What is the status of recruiting a new member?
I believe the council is holding interviews at their next meeting, which will be 2 weeks from,
Yes.
it'll be the 18th.
Okay, good. Any other announcements? No. Any comments and questions from the public that are not related to the agenda? Okay, let's begin with the projects we will be reviewing. Agenda item number 5, Appeal AO2301 of Robert Payson and Kathy Burnett, 17 Apple Tree Court in Burlington, appealing the decision of the zoning administrative officer that there is no performance standard violation at 480 Shelburne Road. The applicant has requested continuation to October 3rd, 2023. The property owner and business owner have expressed that they are okay with the requested continuation. I would entertain a motion to continue this appeal to October 3rd.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, thank you. Number 6 on the agenda, continued conditional use application CU 2301 of Cosentino and Manning to construct a 2-story addition to an existing single-family home. The addition is proposed to be set back 3 feet, 2.5 inches from the side lot line at 11 White Place. Who is here for the applicant, please?
Ryan Manning and Maddie Manning, and we have Nissa online as well, who is our architect.
I am online.
What's the name again?
Missa Aloisi.
Thank you. I'm going to swear you in.
And if you could just tap the button, it'll turn from sort of dull green to bright green.
Thanks. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
I do.
Okay. Who would like to introduce this step in the process briefly?
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, Missy, you can jump in there. Thank you.
We just had some revisions based on the comments from the staff. I believe the first one was the porch overhang that extended beyond the house. We removed that. The other was a roof over the stair that leads down to the basement. The removal of a stair to the from the porch to the east. And lastly, we reduced the lot coverage to meet the requirements. And we provided a survey drawing.
Okay. Now, I know there's a question number one, the only question actually in the staff report, about whether or not the board should consider whether an actual survey should be done to show the boundaries. And I'm wondering what board members think about this. I know you have a drawing by a surveyor.
No,
So
yeah, we provided a survey
You did.
of the. Yep, that's the survey.
So
By
this
licensed
appears, sorry, Nessa, this doesn't appear to be a survey to me because of the notes on the plan that are called out in the staff report. Sorry, I should move the mic closer. Based on the notes that are indicated on the right-hand side of the drawing, Marty.
yeah.
It says it's not a survey,
Yeah.
and it's not stamped by a surveyor.
Well, it
So-
says property lines are approximate and based on monumental found in
Well,
the field.
I think it's because it's a draft. He needs to provide the final surveyor. He is a licensed surveyor, and it is a
Which could be a
survey.
condition. of
A
the plan.
survey.
yeah, so we
Yep.
did little content. The surveyor who did the job with this was actually the same one who did the lot next door. So we brought him in to do, and he did the exact same thing that they did for their conditional use in their addition as well too. So we made sure that it was exactly the same to fit what they needed for their conditional use as well. So
Okay. So, including having a condition that the survey will be a proper survey is fine with you?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about this project from the board?
On that point, is your neighbor's survey recorded? Do you know?
I believe they have it. They used the lines and the markings that they had originally found for them they did their addition, I believe, 2 years ago.
I don't think they recorded it.
And I think the thing is that looks to me like the neighbors doesn't have the tight constraints to the property line that you guys are proposing, and that's where the staff is coming at wanting to get a boundary survey done to confirm it.
It was actually a similar situation, but it was on the far side of the property, which is why it's not showing up on this
Oh,
sheet.
okay. I was just looking at this photo. Okay.
Can I ask where you were headed with that question, Frank?
Well, I mean, we should go the extra step. If there's a proper survey, it should be a recordable survey and it should be recorded.
So the standard doesn't say that, but you can discuss it with the applicant, of course.
Well, I mean, there's a statute that controls what the criteria are for a legal survey, for one you can rely on for property purposes. It's in your interest as well, for if and when you ever sell the property.
Okay.
If he was going to do a real survey, it should be according to state standards, according to statutory standards, and it should be recorded.
Is that a big deal to record a survey?
I don't know what they charge anymore. It's
It's
15,
$25.
Okay.
$25 or something like that to record the survey.
Plus the Mylar print that the surveyor would need to provide.
Right.
Right. Is that acceptable to you?
I guess I don't really follow fully on what exactly we need to do differently than what we had submitted. I went through actually with all the communication from our neighbors that had gone back and forth, and we used the same surveyor to do the plan just so that we didn't run into any issues. So I don't know if we need to what else outside of
Ryan.
what we've had them do that we would need to ask him to do. So I guess
Into that note.
more clarified as to what exactly the
Yeah.
next steps for us would be.
Well, so Ryan, how I understand it is we would provide a stamped survey drawing. He would just take the draft off of this and stamp it and provide it for the planning and zoning permit. And
Okay.
what the board is saying is potentially requiring, which I probably disagree with because it's an added fee, is to file it. If it's not a requirement in the statutes of planning and zoning to get the permit, then you would file it through the clerk's office as a document that would go into your land records, essentially, that would show the survey.
Hang on a second, what does the, I don't want to do overkill. What does the regulations say? What are the land?
Do you want to pull up the red comment and the bold text above it, please?
Typically, don't you only have to record it if a new lot is created?
Right. You won't, state
we're just
statute only
asking them to
requires it to be
confirm.
recorded in the case of a subdivision.
Right.
But the LDRs require it to be surveyed
Right.
when the setback is less than 10 feet from the property line.
Well, what's the exact language? What I want to.
It's number 4 up there.
Basically, the survey that you guys provided, even the surveyor is saying this isn't a boundary survey. It's just a site plan and it's approximate. So if he's confident in his drawing, we're just asking him to take off the disclaimers and put
Yes.
those.
Okay, yeah, and I just wasn't sure about submitting it and having it.
I think we're saying is, I mean, I would disagree with Frank only because we're not creating a lot. This is just part of, as Misa said, it's just part of the property records for the
Okay.
documentation for the filing of this permit.
Okay.
So it's just, we're just looking for the confirmation that what you're submitting is verified.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was a
no, definitely.
disclaimer that bothered
We-
me too.
Yeah,
You
well, yeah.
should remove the disclaimer.
But you don't need
Yeah.
to record it to
And,
get the
you know,
disclaimer.
and I think I agree with him when I look at that line, when I look at that language, you don't necessarily have to record it.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
It needs to
Yeah.
be confirming the property line, something, you know.
So an official survey, a change to the
Don't
document,
say
take out,
official survey, that confuses the, I'm
All right,
sorry. to be
what's
a
it called?
nitpicker.
Just a certified stamp boundary survey.
Okay.
you know. You're just looking for the engineer to put a blessing on it
Okay, perfect.
and take the disclaimers that make it a vague document off.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. I can
Great.
have him do that.
thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, any other questions from the board before we take public comment? All right, hearing none. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this project? Marty, do you see any online? No? Okay,
No, I'll just say that I'm glad that you guys cleaned up the issues we had at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And it's a nice project. And I'm glad that it's been clarified and we can move forward with it.
Perfect.
very attractive
Yeah,
house.
thank
Very attractive.
Yep.
Thank you and good luck.
Yeah, have a good one.
So, need a motion. Oh,
I would
motion to
entertain a
close.
motion to close the hearing.
Move to close.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, it's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me get my document up here. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 7. It's sketch plan application SD 23035 of Eric Sample to subdivide an existing 1.37 acre lot developed with a single-family home and detached accessory dwelling unit into 2 lots of 1 acre and 0.37 acres for the purpose of establishing the existing single-family home and accessory dwelling unit on Lot 1 and constructing a new single-family home or duplex on Lots 2, 25, and 55 Highland Terrace, at 25 and 55 Highland Terrace. Who is here for the applicant?
Me, Eric Sample.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Anyone on the
Anyone
phone with you?
else?
No,
with you?
just me.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand.
Sure.
Is
It's
it
a
just sketch?
No swearing, it's sketch.
It's sketch, no swearing. Okay, thank you. So this is a sketch, you can put your hand down. I'm sorry to confuse you. This is a sketch plan, which is not a formal hearing. It's just an opportunity for you to talk to us about what you have in mind and for us to give you any kind of high-level feedback about what the board thinks of the project and where you might need to focus more on what the requirements of the LDRs are.
Yes.
Do you want to make any introductory comments before we start to go through?
Yes, I do, for the benefit of my neighbors. My intention is to just cut off the piece. As
Can
a
you
sep-
please bring your mic in and make sure it's on?
Better. Is
Thanks.
that good? Sounds like it's on.
Yeah.
I can hear it. Yeah, my intention is to cut off the piece as a separate asset. I have no intention on building on it at this point. I need to do as much as I can to create a separate piece, which I guess includes the TDRs and everything else. But so right now, that's the preliminary outlay. It would be divided between the main two houses, and then there'd be a third piece on there. And there it is, yeah. So that's basically the proposal right now.
Okay. So what we will do is walk through the staff report and focus on the comments that the staff have highlighted in red
Yes.
and have board members discuss those with you. So we'll
Sure.
go ahead and proceed with number one.
I can introduce number one.
Sure.
So Eric had a year ago, contemplated the similar subdivision. I guess it must have been before the 2022 major rule change. And so at that time, he had been permitted to have more lots. And so originally he came in with 3 lots. We warned it as 3 lots. And then upon review, we determined it will be 2 lots. So we just wanted to highlight the fact that we had sent out some of the required warnings as a 3-lot subdivision, but in fact it's only 2, and make sure that was okay with you guys and didn't need to be rewarned.
I think so. I would leave it open. I think your suggestion, it'd be different if they're proposing a 2-lot and they're coming back with 3 now.
Right.
It's less invasive, so.
Okay. Frank, are you good with that?
I'm all right with that.
Okay, good. All right, whoops. The next comment, as this is a sketch plan review. Okay, we're only reviewing criteria relevant for review at this stage and commenting on that. Okay. Comment number 2, I'm going to read the introduction to this. This is about the driveway configuration. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to provide an example lot layout for the proposed lots, demonstrating that a home meeting setback and lot coverage limits could be placed with an appropriately located driveway and vehicle parking area.
So if we bring up the drawing, so I've had discussions with this, having more with Tim at Civil Associates, the surveyor. I'm not adverse to combining it and having just it being fed by the driveway that's already there. And then the other thing would be just to have the driveway not on the crowded corner, but rather just that direction, just east of the lot line, about a similar distance from where the 2 driveways are apart now. I was talking to one of my neighbors tonight, and so it wouldn't get in the way of Edith's driveway, and it wouldn't get in the way of all the stuff around the corner. It'd be right about where the hand is there, if there were to be a driveway. That's probably about where I would propose that it would go in the drawing.
Okay, any questions about that or concerns?
Does the board have any feedback on what they think would be a more appropriate solution here?
Part of me is wondering if we don't maintain the pattern language of the other 3 lots. I know it'd be a driveway pretty close to the corner, but
I specifically don't want to repeat the pattern of the other higher density lots. When I build, if I were to build, or say if it was my whatever, I would want to keep the pattern, the spacious pattern that exists now on 55 and 25, and face it toward the road and be in keeping with the aesthetics of this entire large lot, but rather than cluster it with the others that are at a much higher density. That would be my intention.
Okay. Any concerns? Make it a compound, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. One of my
So the intention is pretty much what you're showing is to carve off lot 1 and then just put a buildable lot on lot 2 for you to potentially build down the road.
Yes.
But you want to maintain sort of more of the, not that it's going to be rural in that area, but more of the feel of the house on lot 1, where it's sort of like it's not in a pattern language of a tight row house.
No,
Okay.
it would be much more spacious, and
Yep.
again, I have no plans to build on it. But if I were, 10, 15 years down the road, I would probably build something else that's small, or my fiance will be moving in with me, and we would, if we were to do something for our kids, it would be nicely, it wouldn't be perhaps out of character even with the other small cottage, 600 square foot cottage. It would be small, even for a duplex, it would be small, it would be away from the lot lines. I have 3 willow trees I planted there 10 years ago, which I would like to, if I were to build, I would keep those. So I would want to keep the character of both my side and of Edith's across the street, which is now empty, which she and I would both love to keep all of this empty, really. It's a really nice place right now. And again, my purpose for subdividing it is just to have it as an asset.
So
Go ahead.
Act 47, which allows up to 5 units an acre in areas served by water and sewer, does not impact this property, right? Because it's not served by water and sewer.
Served by sewer, but not water.
Right. It needs to be both. So it is unlikely that the city will be able to serve this lot by municipal water. And so it's going to unfold in the next 6 months or so how the Planning Commission is going to respond to Act 47. They are certainly going to be changing the development density in areas that are very served by water and sewer. Whether this area kind of gets caught in that as collateral remains to be seen. But right now, what Eric is proposing is A, not vested because it's a sketch, and B, is consistent with the zoning. If he were to come in 6 months from now, it's difficult for me to predict whether, it'd be higher density lots, in which case he would be probably required to space the homes so that future subdivision could take place.
Okay.
But
Did you say that again? I'm confused about the use of the word collateral.
if it were roped into the zoning changes that are being made because of Act 47, if this neighborhood somehow got roped into those changes, even though it's not required by Act 47, if the city decided to say this neighborhood being a residential, generally of the same character of the water and sewer neighborhoods, is subject to the same zoning. That's a possibility.
That would mean increased density would be available?
Yeah, but it's a total what if at this point.
But that wouldn't affect this particular layout. It would only make it higher
Not
density
at
than
sketch level, but if you delayed your submission for preliminary to beyond the 6 months, you would be.
And it could be advantageous or it could be disadvantageous. If they say minimum of 4 units an acre, then you couldn't have the subdivision and the spread out lots that you want. You'd have to have a more dense
That's
subdivision.
bizarre. I will absolutely just finish this up. My intention is to finish this application. And with this, I've already lined up the surveyor. I've already talked to Tim about it. I would just, so.
Then get your application in so you're vested under these current zones.
Yeah, I want to get it done and be done, like forever. And my family, I have family members that are involved, and as well as my parents' cottage, so on and so forth. So I need to settle all this. So assuming that I do settle, and I would like to settle it as soon as possible, then this would be vested, this situation.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I do have a question about
Sure.
water. If there's no city water, how would you, are you sure, do we care? What would you do about water for Lot 2?
Well, in talking to I had to have the well re-drilled when we added the cottage. And the pump guys said at the water table, it's just nothing but water all the time. I mean, this is like the wetlands, the water tables. So if a new well were needed east of the property line, I guess that would be the proposal.
Yeah, he would have to demonstrate adequate water capacity at final plat. So you're going to have to present, and I know that your engineer has done this before, you're going to have to present documentation showing that you have that capacity at the next stage of review.
Yep. And is that for when a building proposal is put forward?
Right, because you can't create a building lot that doesn't have adequate water capacity.
But I mean, in terms of what I'm proposing to do now,
Right.
as just to divide it as a separate piece without a building proposal, it can go through now without doing that part of it.
No, you would have to demonstrate that the water is available, even if you didn't actually take the physical action to make the water available.
And is that the state who makes that determination?
I don't think so. I think that it's just a report from your engineer.
From my the surveyor engineer, the civil engineer?
Well, it depends on, you know, what services that your engineering firm offers, but they may reach out to the well driller and get information from them. They may look through the state records to see what information is available there.
Okay. Yeah, because we had an entire water plan. Spent a lot on it to set this all up, and at that time, the idea was that with the line running along the back, the sewer, that the wells would not be a problem. All along the property, I mean, there's been wells drilled all over at higher density than what I'm proposing. So so that is something that I would discuss with my civil engineer as to how we would document that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I don't think that right now anyone is questioning whether it's available. It's just a box that needs to be ticked.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to number 3. This is regarding the orientation of the front of the building. And the staff comment suggests that the orientation face east, but based on what you just told us, it sounds like in your mind, your orientation would be facing south?
Yes, because all the other 2 buildings on the lot face south. Would make much more sense.
Right,
The front
I hear
doors,
that.
yeah, so I wouldn't just glob it into the existing density. I would keep it more spacious and have it face the road. I think it would make more sense. Also, if you're facing, a lot of people want their driveway to come into their front door, so that's another, and there's not a lot of room there for a driveway. I mean, it wouldn't be any greater density than driveways that are already there, but I would want to not follow that pattern and have the front face south, and if there were to be a driveway, it would come in there. Yeah.
Any questions or comments about that?
That makes sense to me.
Okay, number 4. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to provide a proposed well location and demonstrate that the proposed location is designed in accordance with the state's potable water supply program as part of the application. We just discussed that, so I don't think we need to belabor that. Number 5, this comment is about street trees, and the LDRs have changed since the properties along, is it Highland Terrace, were built, and they aren't requiring street trees anymore, but we're wondering if you would consider putting some in.
I absolutely would. I've planted 10 trees since I've been there. There are 3 giant willows on the property that I planted with my father and my son, and it's my intention to keep those. So I have no problem with putting more trees, but I've already added.
Sure.
I was bare lot when I got it, and now there's 10 trees, 3 willows, oak tree, 2 apple trees, peach tree. A lot of this is my father's.
Okay,
He planted.
thank
So
you.
I have no problem with that.
Any questions from the board?
So presumably when you present your preliminary plan, it'll include a landscaping plan that shows the trees, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, number 6, this is about, is this a simple subdivision, or does the board believe a master plan should be required? What do board members think?
I think it's a subdivision.
I would agree. Any
Yeah,
other?
I think so too. I mean, what would even, well, you know, I mean, if we're all agreed that it's a subdivision, we don't have to.
Does
go
anyone
further.
not agree? Okay. Okay. Great. Any other questions before we move on to public comment? All right. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this project? Are there any online? No. Okay. I guess that concludes tonight's sketch plan. And we will look forward to seeing you back and encourage you to get that application in as soon as you can.
Okay, so my next steps are just the engineer's drawing, and then what after that?
So it's a minor subdivision. I think, I forget what it said at the beginning. It says at the beginning whether it's a minor or major. So then you have to submit all of the things required in the checklist under either minor or major subdivision. And then get that application in.
And do we have an idea if it's minor or major yet? Or?
It says in the staff report, I just wrote it so long ago, I don't remember what it said.
Minor.
Yep,
And
it's
that was all
minor.
the stuff you gave me before with the flood maps and all that stuff.
It's in the, it's on page, well, it's under B, general subdivision standards. The application will be considered a minor subdivision. So take this document and, you know, make sure you catch all the things that it says you're going to need to do in addition to the Appendix E requirements for that submission.
Yep. And I have all that, so that shouldn't be a problem. Do we have space in the next, do we need another meeting, or is this just processed after that?
So the board has concluded sketch. So once you get your application in, it'll be put on the board agenda that follows that next application.
Okay, so we need another meeting?
Yes, for the minor subdivision.
Well, there's got to be a notice period first.
Okay.
The notice period, 7 days,
It's 15 for a subdivision.
15?
Yeah, applications are generally due 4 weeks before the meeting that they are scheduled for.
Okay,
Do we need to vote?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much.
great, thank you,
We'll see you back here.
thank you.
Now, we are way ahead of time. Number 8 on the agenda was scheduled for 8 o'clock. Dave, are you representing this applicant? Are you the only representative?
That is correct.
Oh, all right, okay, so we can go ahead.
And the applicant is also online.
Oh, they are, okay, great, thanks.
Hi, I'm here online.
Okay,
Yeah, it is a little funny putting times on the agenda, but we do put in the agenda that all things are warned for 7, just in case somebody, you know, thinks that they can get away with showing up at 9.
sure.
And then gets upset about it, but we do try to be respectful, and I appreciate you asking the question.
Okay, continued preliminary and final plat application SD 2311 of Casey Douglas to amend a previously approved 5.52 acre 6-unit planned unit development. The amendment consists of subdividing Lot 6, developed with a single-family home and barn, into 2 lots of 0.69 acres, Lot 64, or Lot 6A, and 0.60 acres, Lot 6B, for the purpose of demonstrating the existing single-family home and barn and constructing a new single-family dwelling on each lot at 1200 Dorset Street. So, who is with you, Dave?
Casey Douglas.
Okay. I'm going to ask both of you to raise your right hand. I'm going to swear you in. Are you with us, Casey?
I am.
Okay, thanks. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, we've already been introduced to the applicants. Before we start to go through the staff report, are there any comments you'd like to make?
No, the last time we appeared before the board, there were a number of homework items that were required to be addressed, and we believe we've addressed them, but nonetheless, this will be proof in the pudding in regards to how staff has reviewed what has been submitted and the board's thoughts on those.
Okay, thank you. The first comment is asking you to respond to the DPW comments.
So that one actually we did address, but we just didn't share it with Marty on that. So we sent out a very detailed package to Tom DePietro, the Public Works Director, 4 weeks ago that specifically talked about the force mains that basically run through the property. Point of interest, if you would like to know, there is a force main that runs all the way from Dorset Farms through this particular property and ultimately ties into the city's conveyance system. And Tom wanted to better understand exactly where that is, and we provided all sorts of documents to do that. It wasn't until about 7 o'clock tonight I shared all that with Marty, so there is email correspondence to that effect, but Tom specifically asked us to identify how the force main runs through this particular property, and actually the pink line is the one that services the existing lots, and it is not associated with the Dorset Farms pump station.
All right.
But the reason, anyways, if you could put in your mind's eye, Dorset Farms and a force main that essentially runs up the east side of Dorset Street, northerly. And basically all those drops of sewage are forced past this particular project site. However, when they got to the healed house, there was both bedrock at that particular high point, as well as a specimen tree that would have been right in the way of that particular force main. So rather than taking down the tree and dealing with bedrock, they asked permission to go onto the backside of Paul Heald's house. And in this particular case, the force main was installed essentially following Folsham Hollow Road and then cutting through the north just to the left of the Lot 5 house in that crosshatched area. So with that, there is also on the application that had been on a separate application pending before the board, a proposed group of condominiums north of this project site. It showed where this force main comes back out through and eventually heads back towards the recreation path. So anyways, plethora of information we shared with Tom. He did come back with one follow-up question on the 30th of August, and we addressed that. Very happy to have it as a condition if you don't believe me, but that's at least what we have done in order to help Public Works better understand the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had put in the staff comment there that I would share a report from Tom, an update verbally, and same as what Dave is saying, that this has kind of been resolved via email, and Tom had just sent me on the 30th, I think the same email that I shared with Dave, sort of for almost conditions of approval type comments, just saying that the pump station serving Lot 6B would be private and remain private and that kind of thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, the next comment. Similarly, this asks the applicant to address stormwater superintendent's comments.
So this is where I apologize to Frank. Last time we had a discussion in regards to theoretical cherry picking as far as whether you do or do not have to comply with stormwater. Marty was very good and found an embedded requirement deep in the land development regulations that specifically ties together previous subdivisions and subsequent development of those lots as a cohesive package in determining jurisdiction for stormwater. So nonetheless, with that being found, we followed that. We've developed a stormwater management plan. We shared that with Marissa, and I understand that there's no adverse comments, but I'll let Marty confirm that.
Confirmed, yeah, I just heard from Marissa today. She just had one comment, and it was similarly a condition of approval type of thing. Just there was a call out that didn't exactly match the outlet structure detail on sheet C4 too, but
Yeah.
something that can be cleaned up as a condition of approval.
We understand that's a typo that we're quite comfortable fixing.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Can I ask it just a dumb question? So what is the proposed stormwater treatment?
I'm sorry?
What is the proposed stormwater treatment?
So we have a gravel wetland that basically collects stormwater from both the north building and the south building and provides both water quality treatment as well as peak flow mitigation. So that's essentially the feature that will meet the state stormwater rules as well as the city's 25-year design
Okay.
storm requirement.
That one?
Pardon me?
That little one that I'm highlighting on the screen?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
Sorry, that's the gravel wetland there in the middle there?
So no, so that's a very small localized treatment component, but the larger system is down on the southerly lot. So all of those flows are directed to that particular facility.
Thanks.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Number 3, staff recommends the board include a condition of a.
I just have a
Sure.
question, general knowledge kind of question that I lack. Going back to the stormwater sink or whatever, the ultimate destination of the stormwater. Does that include vegetation or is that open water or what's that going to look like when you?
So a gravel wetland is actually designed to manage the stormwater typically below surface. So, go back 20 years ago, we would have designed an open pond and it would provide treatment through essentially settling of particulates, suspended solids, And the theory being if you detain the water long enough, that those solids will settle out at the bottom, and that's where the pollutants will stay. The gravel wetlands are different in the fact that it's essentially a porous type filter where drops of water are forced to go through the void spaces of essentially drainage stone. And it's through that contact of the void of those particular surfaces that you get additional treatment over and above a much better improved treatment efficiency than the traditional open water pond. And what it does is eliminates the majority of the time the open water, what do you want to call it? What do the attorneys call it? It's
It's marshy, is that how it?
well, I'll get there. But anyways, as far as trying to put fences up to keep the kids out of, that's the word.
Right.
You win. So anyways, it eliminates that particular issue because the majority of the time, all of that activity is occurring below essentially a muck layer. It's a wetland layer that is designed to support wetland vegetation. So you're getting some uptake through the vegetation on the top, but at the same time, you're also having much of the treatment occurring in the drainage stone underneath.
So what's the surface of the area like? Is it mucky? Is it solid? I mean, if a kid wants to
It's
be actively nuisance,
it's going to be like a wet lawn.
okay.
And what it looks like is up to you in regards to how aggressively you want to plant that out.
And
Be
no
done
need
with-
to fence it or anything like
No, typically not. However, when we talked about the majority of the time it being dry, during those really large storm events in which the peak flows need to be held and then released in a controlled way, the area above your lawn or the muck layer does fill up temporarily, gets released, and then typically 12 to 24 hours later, there's nothing there. So that's typically how those gravel wetlands work, and they're now outside of the preferred method of infiltrating the drops of water. And there are unfortunately very few sites in the city that actually qualify to do infiltration. When you can't do infiltration, the gravel wetland is the next preferred choice.
that? Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, did we do number 3, condition of approval? Oh, no, we did not. Staff recommends the board include a condition of approval requiring roof lines to maximize solar gain potential.
Yes, this one comes from our discussion last month where our original condition was going to be that the applicant orient the roof line south. And there was some discussion of perhaps south is not always the best for solar gain. So instead of saying orient south for solar gain, let's just say orient for solar gain. And that allows us to orient it south if that's the best for this property, but also allows us other orientations if those are better for this property.
We like that language.
Okay. Any questions from the board? No? All right, number 4. Is the applicant okay with the conditions that are set out above number 4 in the staff report?
Correct. So we have provided to staff and the board specific narrative of features that are going to be associated with each future application, zoning permit application. And what I'm seeing here is that essentially we are to bring that back forward as part of the application to help reinforce not only the staff's ability to understand what they're supposed to be reviewing, but also reinforce the applicant's understanding of what they're supposed to include in their application. So it's different, but it's not onerous as far as that's concerned. So that's acceptable.
Questions, comments? Okay, number 5, staff recommend,
I have a question.
Sure.
I should have picked it up on the site plan, but how far recessed are you from Dorset Street?
Oh, good question. Off the top of my head, I think the south house is set back approximately 20 feet from the right-of-way line. And for the north house, it's set back more from either one. So waiting for the plan to come up, you can see, Frank, the right-of-way line as start at the bottom left of the drawing where it says Folsham Hollow Road, and There's a long dash dot line that represents the right of way. So when we're computing those distances from Dorset Street right of way, not the pavement itself, that's the 20-foot number we shared with you. As far as the actual distance to the street itself, it's probably about double that.
Well, I mean, I just mentioned it. I don't know how much we all care, anybody besides me, but I don't like the backyards fronting Dorset Street, you know. Is there anything, I mean,
Isn't there going to be a lot of vegetation? Isn't that what you've planned?
So I think what we talked about was making sure that there was communications. So here we have a back porch that specifically speaks to anybody on the recreation path as they're going by. So this is a very challenge site in the fact that there's essentially 3 sides with public roads. So we had to make a conscious decision as far as which parts would be communicating with the east side, how the west side would be communicating with the recreation path and Dorset Street to balance the challenges and requirements of how buildings communicate with the street.
but you didn't answer, unless I missed it, you didn't answer the question. You know, and
Can
you're
you
gonna have
repeat the question,
vegetation
please?
screening Dorset Street.
So are we trying to screen or are we trying to communicate? My understanding is we've always been trying to not hide the homes, but basically get people to communicate with each other. And that's by having these particular front porches in proximity to the street itself.
I think at our hearing last month, what we had talked about, there was some sort of, that's where this kind of requirement to lock in certain features came from, because the sketches that Dave and Casey had provided were pretty nice. And we were like, well, which of these features can you commit to? Because we kind of like what we're seeing, but we want to make sure that this is going to get built as it's being shown. And so one of those features was a porch that makes the back of that house facing Dorset look less like a back. It would have like a deck porch that almost resembles a front porch, and in that way to both the pedestrian and biker on the bike path and also to the driver. And this is that elevation here. And so you can see it includes the porch.
So there won't be screening there by trees. I thought I read there were.
We, just to answer the question about screening, we are retaining those particular trees along the street line that are mature in that regard, only proposing to remove the trees that are in the immediate vicinity of the footprints of the buildings. So the landscaping plan does show those particular trees that exist and would be retained. But is there a plan for constant landscaping to hide the building? No, that never was the discussion point in the past, from my understanding.
What?
Say you should never have a 3-column porch.
Okay.
But I
Why?
think just jumping in here, I think my
The aesthetics? Yeah.
recollection of last month's meeting was we kind of talked about what the east side facing Folsom Hollow Road and also the west side facing Dorset, what they needed to do to kind of, lock in those communicative features. And then sort of where we landed on the south facade, which faces the flat part of Folsom Hollow Road, not the cul-de-sac part, but the flat part. We decided there was enough vegetation there that there didn't necessarily need to be an attractive communicative feature on that end of the building. So that facade is probably just going to look kind of something like the left facade in this picture.
Yeah, given given if we can rely on the elevations for what we'll ultimately be looking at, which is always dicey, but if assuming we can, I really don't have much of an issue in this particular case. I have a general concern on that issue.
Kind of segues us into the fifth comment here, which has to do with the windows. So in that elevation that Marla had up earlier, you kind of saw the porch that faces onto Dorset, and then also there's other elements of that facade that make it look front facade-y beyond the porch. And it's maybe the number of windows or the number of building breaks or the different roof heights. there's other elements beyond. So if the applicant were just to add a porch but do things differently with the rest of the house, it still may not feel, once it's constructed, like a front porch. It may just feel like a porch slapped on the back of a house. And so that was kind of where this fifth comment comes from, is just asking the board if there are other features that perhaps the applicant would readily agree to, but that just weren't enumerated in their first round of design criteria. So that's kind of where that coming from.
So we're acceptable to that, and Marty just mentioned a number of good bullet points that would be prudent to carry forward in that regard. Different roof lines, breaking up the mass of the building. So the point being is, how many times do we see basically a rectangular shaped building with a couple of punch out windows and something thrown on the back? That's not what we're looking for. So what we want to do is prompt all future applicants for this particular building to recognize that there are certain features that we want to make sure are included in its design to ensure that the goals are being met here. So this is where I lost track of Marty's third item that was beyond the first two I just mentioned. But we're very comfortable, I think, with that particular aspect. So we basically have differing roof lines, breaking up the mass of the building, and the windows. I'm not sure how to integrate windows.
I mean, if that's a fair representation of what's going to happen.
Well, so the point here is that this is not a designed building. This is a concept. So the condition could be something like, whatever percent of glazing is represented by this shall vary by shall be reduced by no more than 5% or something. And we could work together to figure out that calculation.
In looking at the site plan and looking at this elevation, it looks like you could pretty closely create a house with that likeness. If I'm looking at, so it says, similar.
Well, that was the whole intent, was to basically identify what the applicant was comfortable representing to the board, and two, now it's a matter of narrating this particular, the major features, so that if we don't come back with the exact elevation here, that something that the future application does include specific features that we're trying to narrate. So all we're trying to do is take the picture and narrate those features that we're all acknowledging and agreeing that will be included.
Well, the point about this particular elevation compared to what you finally do is if you took out any one of these windows, in my view, it would materially change the effect.
Right.
Which is got the little window on the right side of the garage and center that bay of 3, you would improve the elevation. So I'd be okay with reducing the number of windows if that window was gone and that was centered.
But we're trying to reduce your workload in the future. We don't want them to have to come back when they decide that instead of, gangs of 3, they want 2 gangs of 5. Or they want no gangs and they want the same number of windows but all individual. And, we don't want to have to use the board's time for that kind of a change.
So really what we're trying to do is create a bullet point narrative that allows an applicant, without the benefit of this picture, to be able to understand the features that have to be integrated into the house design, so that when they come back to staff with a zoning permit application, that all of those items have been hit. It's not always going to be perfect, but as long as we basically put on notice that those are the requirements going forward, then staff is going to be in a position where they can either say yep or nope. If they say no and the applicant doesn't agree, they get to come back and see you perhaps. So there is still a process where disagreements can be further discussed. But in this particular case, what we're trying to do is minimize the use of your time and allow staff's professional judgment to carry the day. And all we're trying to do is give them the tools to be able to make that particular determination.
So just to wrap up this discussion a little bit, Marty has suggested that some of the characteristics in here be written into the decision. So the characteristics, and we're talking about both lots, Marty, or just one of the lots right now?
Right now, most of our conversation has been about Lot 6B, the southern one. I don't think there's a ton of concern about Lot 6A, but we could certainly fold that one in here too.
The 6A is going to be down the road, years, right?
The north lot will be the first. It's the south lot that will be the one in the future.
Oh, so
That
the,
one's got a lot of vegetation. Pretty big
So
chunk of
6A, they're committing to this list of things. 2 stories, dark roof, ridge line running east to west, front porch facing south, a recessed garage, and a private yard of at least 100 square feet. 100 square feet. Is that a typo?
That's your regulations.
At least, yeah.
Oh,
the
to meet the open
open space,
space
yeah.
requirements.
Yes.
I see.
Well, can we just tack on there a statement about minimum glazing?
So that's for the northern lot, and then for the southern lot, it's this other list of things. And yeah, I think that's the suggestion: is tack on what you feel it needs to be tacked on. So if it's glazing, at least a certain amount of glazing facing Dorset Street, and a varied roof line, and the siding pattern being not perfectly uniform across the whole thing, or whatever it is you like about this. It has this like
You can
line
just
thing.
insert varied after the word dark in that paragraph. Dark varied roof line.
That's good.
Yeah.
And
That's
then,
efficient.
and then the issue is how to frame the language to get your minimum glazing and how tight you want it.
I'll ask probably a silly question, but can you attach that drawing to the decision as a reference?
So we had this conversation last time about what substantially similar means, and the conclusion was that it was not sufficiently specific. What we can do is we can allow it to close, and I'm sorry, I'm stepping on your toes here. We can allow it to close, and I have the information I need to calculate what that glazing percentage is. So you guys can make a decision if you trust that the board is not gonna, go crazy and say it must be within it must be exactly the same amount of glazing. If you guys can agree now, can you represent to them that you're gonna say plus or minus the amount of, some reasonable amount?
And then something about appropriately balanced window orientation and configuration.
Yep.
Yes, that's what was missing. In bottom line is we don't want all the windows on one side and the big blank building on the other. So that's an appropriate.
so
guidance.
what would be the percentage of deviation that we would like to allow?
So if this particular building were 20 is showing 20%, and that may be an excessive
Glazing.
number. But let's just use that for round numbers. If it's currently depicted as 20%, is it plus or minus 5%? Is it plus or minus 3%? That's what we're trying to understand.
So typically, something like that, you'd want a sliding scale, because if it was 20%, you'd be comfortable with the 3% swing
Right.
either way. If it was showing 40%,
And it could be.
you could be within a 5% swing.
So the mathematician says when we start with 3%, 20%, and you have a 3% variation on either side, it's essentially 15% of the number that
Right.
Marla is going to calculate.
Dave and I were making the same face when you said that. We figured that out. Yeah, so it's a percentage of 15% of the glazing
the
percentage.
calculated value. Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And if Marlon and Marty are not happy with it, then I'm happy to look at it.
I think we hope it doesn't come to that, and that's maybe the point of being really explicit with these, is that it doesn't leave anything up to our judgment. There's no kind of argument about whether or not this is similar enough. It's just we just run the numbers.
Yeah.
We just say, is there 2 heights or is there 1? And that way it's black and white, and we don't have to. Yeah.
So board, do you have any other questions? And do you believe we have enough information from the applicant to make a decision?
Was that it for staff comments, or just 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
So we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Let's see if there are any public comments. There's no one in the house I can see. Is there anyone online?
Nope.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to close SD 2311. Okay, I'll second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for starting early.
Thank you
Thank
for being
you.
efficient.
We're all for that.
Thanks a lot.
Right.
Okay.
Minutes?
Oh, minutes, yes. The minutes of the August 1st, 2023 meeting. I read them. I think they look fine. I'll move that we adopt the minutes.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of adopting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? The minutes are adopted and the meeting is concluded.
So I have a question for,
Let me
So-
end the meeting unless your question is something for the public.
oh, it's after the end of the meeting,
Okay, so let me end the meeting.
a post-meeting question.
So while we're ending. the meeting-
Logistical.